I'm your host for tonight, Ben Andrews, and I'm really excited about tonight's episode. We have a couple industry icons with us. But before I dive into that, I just want to remind everybody, let me look at my notes here, that we are 6 weeks out from the Seattle Film Summit. And yes, if you are not aware, the Seattle Film Summit is 100% online this year from November 1st to the 22nd. And if you miss any of those panels or any of those days, ticket attendees get access to all of that 60 days after the summit. And we're really excited about what we're bringing you this year. The only thing that your 60 days does not apply for will be the showcases and the networking sessions that happen during the summit. Now, showcases, what do you mean, Ben? Well, I'm glad you asked, because there's opportunities for actors and screenwriters and filmmakers at the summit that we're very proud of. First and foremost, we have an actor showcase where we are going to be vetting 30 actors, and they are going to be able to do short monologues in front of over a dozen casting directors, agents, and managers. And we also have a filmmaker showcase where we're also promoting 30 filmmakers, vetted filmmakers, in front of a dozen distributors and producer reps. So this is just high-level stuff that's happening at the summit. But for more details, go to www.seattlefilmsummit.com, and there will be lots more coming soon. So I want to dive right into our guests that are here tonight. Our first guest is Burt Weissbourd, dozen distributors. Burt he's done a lot. He's been a producer, he's a screenwriter, and a current novelist. The movies he has produced have starred iconic actors such as Fred Astaire, Sissy Spacek, Sam Shepard. He currently focuses on novels, and tonight we're going to be learning about the release of his fifth novel entitled Danger in Plain Sight. And our second guest is Jacob Epstein, a TV writer and a producer who's been part of iconic projects such as Hill Street Blues, LA Law, and Without a Trace. So without further ado, let us bring in our... There he is.
Hi. There he is.
Hello, Jacob. How are you?
Good.
Did Bert get tired of waiting for us?
No, there he is. He's right there.
Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for enduring our technical difficulties. That was a fun start to the episode.
Sure.
So how are you doing today, Bert? I know that you're over in Long Island, correct?
Correct.
So that means we're keeping you up late tonight is the idea, right?
Well, it's like being making movies again.
Yeah, right. And then Jacob Epstein, and you're based out of LA, right?
Yeah, I'm right in the middle of the fires and lots of apocalyptic orange sky and stuff. So we're having a great summer here.
Yeah,
the business completely shut down and so on. But I guess this is Hollywood.
You did mention that there's a comet too coming, right? Is that the next?
There's a comet. That's, I think, we're waiting for it.
Well, we're really excited to have both of you with us tonight. Thank you for taking the time to do this. Excited to announce that Burt Weissbourd's fifth book, Danger in Plain Sight, has been released recently, and I think we're going to ask some questions about your film career and your novelist career. Is that correct, Burt?
That's what I understand.
Well, without further ado, I'm going to just hand this over to Mr. Epstein and let you do your magic, sir.
Well, great. Thank you. I should probably explain to everybody how Burt and I know each other and why this is so much fun for me, because Burt was my first boss and hired me when he was a powerhouse producer here, and I was his reader, and he gave me a little room in the with a window looking out over the parking lot in Westwood, and he would throw these screenplays in to me, and I had to write up coverage for him. And I loved movies, but I didn't know anything about how they were made. You know, I would run into him and he would say, well, what'd you think of that one? And I'd say, oh, I mean, this guy is some writer. You know, you should read this description of this battleship that he did. I mean, this guy can really bring it. And he would say, a description of a battleship, huh? And I'd say, well, yeah. And he'd say, he said, where's the shark? And what he meant was, what's the screenplays aren't about beautiful descriptions of sunsets and rainfalls and stuff. It's all about story. And I wasn't, you know, I learned an enormous amount from that experience. And he was very patient with me. And so, you know, I think probably the thing to do is for Burt to sort of explain where he was at that time, because he was sort of at the top of the food chain, making these wonderful movies at a very exciting time in Hollywood. And he succeeded, I think, because he had, he'll explain it, but he had respect for people who don't ordinarily get as much respect as they should in the business. And that's, I think, a lot of what led to his success. But Burt should explain what happened.
Thank you, Jacob. I very vividly remember when you first came into my office.
Good or bad?
It was great. It was great. I came out to Hollywood. I was just 28 years old. And this was in 1977. And I had learned, I mean, I didn't know anyone. And I had learned that for $9,600, you could finance a high budget screenplay. And what I did is I went to writers that I love, and I'll talk about some of these writers. And I made very unusual deals because I also believed that it was important to back screenwriters, to stand behind their work. And that was the basis of my company, which was I would make unusual deals with screenwriters, and they would generally work for less, far less than they usually work. But they would be more involved, and I would guarantee that they had the opportunity to be the first to do the rewrite. I would get them involved in, helping choose a director and a cast. And it was a very different kind of, and I was mostly naive. I mean, I later actually got a lot of heat from some studio executives for some of the stuff I was doing. But
they used to call you the professor.
The writers really liked it, and they kept coming back. And so, and what I should really do is talk a little bit about some of the writers, because very early on, I had a quite wonderful list of writers that were working with me and would come back to work again. And they included Andy Lewis, who had just written Clute. And those younger people may not remember it, but it was a Jane Fonda won an Oscar for it. It was a wonderful.
It was one of the biggest movies of the decade.
And I worked with Andy on 4 screenplays. I worked with Freddie Raphael, who had written Darling, Two for the Road, Far from the Madding Crowd, Glittering Prizes, and he was English, and he wrote a screenplay for me called A New Wife that Al Pacino and Diane Keaton agreed to make. And I actually went to New York to read that screenplay. Again, I was like 30 years old, to read that screenplay with Al Pacino and Diane Keaton. And I didn't get a lot of praise for my reading, but I'll never forget it. I was also working with Alvin Sargent. Alvin had written Ordinary People, Julia, Paper Moon, Stuart Stern, who wrote Rebel Without a Cause, The Ugly American, Sybil, that's the one with Sally Field. With Larry Cohen, who'd written Carrie, I worked with him on Ghost Story. And I also worked on with Ross McDonald, the mystery writer, and he wrote his only screenplay for me. It's the first person I went to when I went to Hollywood. So that was a really extraordinary cast of writers, and we just had quite an exciting time. And that's where I really learned about writing screenplays.
Well, I remember from a very different, I had no idea where I was, but these were some of the greatest screenwriters that have ever worked in Hollywood. But you would be locked up. But I do remember you being locked up in conferences with them up in the second floor. And, I just had never, I had no point of reference. I thought that's what producers did. But, what I thought was so, in retrospect, what was such an important moment of it. And I think it's one of the reasons why these writers were all drawn to you, aside from the fact that you paid them $9,600, was that you really engaged them in story work. You were a very creative collaborator and partner in script development. And that's quite unusual in a business where most producers are egomaniacs and send down a bunch of implausible notes that then they force the writers to go and adapt to. But you were in there with them as their partner, and I think that was part of what was so special about it. And so I wondered what you learned in that factory when you were in there working with these writers day after day and working with some of the best minds, best story minds there were. And how do you think what did you take away from that experience?
Well, I'm going to read something that I wrote, because I wrote a little bit about this, because I really didn't understand how exciting it was and how these writers all were very good at writing character. And what I wrote was, as a producer developing a screenplay, you look for stories with strong, complex characters and a rich stew. That is to say, a situation with conflict, emotional intensity, and the potential to evolve in unexpected ways. And that's exactly how I approach the books that I write. And that's what I learned from working with screenplays, which is you didn't need to develop the plot. We used to sit in the office and we would meet oftentimes 3 times a week on a screenplay, and we didn't know where it was going. But what we did talk about is who the people were and what was the arc going to be for how these people could change, how they could become self-aware, how they could have relationships, how they could, become more tuned in to their kids or whatever it was that this was about. And we found that as you really worked at that and went over and over, and there's a lot of rewriting, you could come up with absolutely unexpected story things, and they go in directions that you didn't expect them to go.
Well, you write these character-driven thrillers now, and novel writing is a very different. You use very different muscles for that, but obviously, the story work you did was integral to all of that. Tell us a bit about the evolution of Danger in Plain Sight and Callie James, your protagonist, who is really one of the great characters you've created, and and a little bit, if you can, about what it's like to work from the inside in fiction, where you're able to get inside people's heads versus writing screenplays where character is action, character is plot.
Well, Callie is a good example of what I was talking about, because Callie changes in the course of this book, and she goes in a direction that I had no idea she would go in when I started writing the book. And that grew from her self-awareness. I mean, I think that to really talk about Callie, you have to talk about Callie and Cash, who is the other protagonist in the book. And in the prologue, Callie, who is running a really wonderful restaurant and does a beautiful job. And that's the thing you have to understand, that Callie lives in her restaurant, lives for her restaurant. I mean, she's hardly ever out of it, and she doesn't have much of a life outside of it. She has rules for it. And in the prologue, she comes down early because she oftentimes has difficulty sleeping. And she finds that, you know, she's checking stuff that's coming out of vegetables that's coming from Vancouver, and she finds all this smuggling netsukas, which is ivory carvings that are used to hold things on in the old Japanese clothing. And it turns out her bartender, whose name is Cash, has been smuggling these netsuka into her restaurant, which is like impossible for her to even imagine. And she gets into a huge fight with him. She calls the police. She has him arrested. And, you know, he's not hurting her, but this is really a violation of her ethics, of her sense of what her restaurant should be. And so at the very beginning, she does something that's very hurtful to him, and it's all he can do to stay out of jail. And she's fired, he's fired. And the book opens 2 years later, when Callie, who's, you know, living in her restaurant, gets an unexpected visit from her ex-husband, who she hasn't seen in 14 years.
Because part of the reason why she's so controlled and living so much within the confines of a restaurant is she's been burned by experience. She's had that marriage burned her pretty bad.
No, that's exactly right. And she has a 13-year-old son that she loves dearly, and he's never even met his father. So, and it really is a lot of the explanation for how restrained and sort of shut down Callie is. So anyway, 14 years later, this Frenchman who she'd been married to shows up at her restaurant, and he's in trouble. And she just throws him out. And outside, he gets hit by a truck, not by accident, and is, you know, blown through the picture window at the front of her restaurant. And that's very early on. And she decides she can't just leave him if he's in such danger. And she feels like he has the right to, or her son has the right to meet his father. So Callie hides him. And when she gets back to the restaurant, there are two assassins there who tell her in no uncertain terms that she better find him for them by tonight. And she's completely out of her depth. And she goes to the only person she thinks can possibly help her, who is Cash, the same guy that she had arrested. And it was a really fun scene to write. He's working at a real sleazy bar, and she comes to see him, and she says, "I'll pay you. I need you to protect the restaurant, da 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 da. And he just, he asked for like $75,000. I mean, it's like an astonishing sum of money. And but she has no choice, and she does it. And that's where the story really starts, where these two very unlikely, incompatible people have to team up to save her restaurant, her ex-husband, and eventually her own life.
And we should say that, Daniel, the French ex brings with him, a whole, we're all in I mean, this is high intrigue and high stakes spycraft. It's not, we should, I think, maybe tell the audience a little bit about what the stakes are and why these guys are after him.
No, that's a good point. I mean, because he's a very good reporter, and he's on a story that has a lot to do with money laundering and weapons smuggling, and he knows stuff that puts him, well, they want to kill him, and they are after him, and that's what they bring into her restaurant.
Yeah. And anyway, it's a wonderful book, and I read it in an early draft, and just you can't, it just you're up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you can't stop. So it just came out great. But what was interesting to me also is that it's something of a departure, but then also shares some DNA with the earlier trilogy that you wrote about Corey Logan. Also a very different woman than Callie, but also who goes through an odyssey of emotional change and a terrific character arc. And I wondered where you came up with her. Where did Corey Logan pop up in your life? What inspired you to write about her?
I first thought about Corey Logan when I left the movie business and moved to Bainbridge Island, outside of Seattle. And there were women there that went salmon fishing all summer long in Alaska. And they were very capable in the wilderness country and on small boats. And it's very dangerous, and it's very, it's long hours, and, it's easy to get hurt. And I was very interested in these women that were so expert at it. And I actually first wrote a screenplay about a woman like that who is framed and sent to jail and comes out from prison and wants to get her son back. And that was the genesis of the story. But I think, like Callie, and I want to come back to Callie for just a second. I mean, Callie goes through this arc in the book with Cash, where she comes to become more in touch with herself and what she's feeling, and she actually falls in love with Cash, and she's never had a relationship like that, and it changes her, and it allows her to do things that she could never do. And Corey Logan goes through the same kind of trajectory. She's not a woman who runs a restaurant. She's a woman who is, lives by herself and is at home in the wilderness and gets horribly framed, and she has to learn to become insightful and self-aware. And the way that happens is that she has to go to a psychiatrist in order to get her son back from foster care. And he does an evaluation, and he doesn't believe that she was framed. And it goes very badly, and he's a kind of bumbling guy. And again, as different from Corey as Cash is from Callie. And this psychiatrist is like always sideswiping cars. He can't drive. He's always, setting a fire in his wastebasket with the matches he uses for his pipe. And Cash,
He's all in the mind and she's all physical, and it's an extraordinary partnership which evolves and which really becomes the foundation of the trilogy, because they fall in love and they become not just lovers but crime solvers as the trilogy unfolds. And I think it's a very, very unlikely love story between super ego and, I don't know if you'd say super ego and id, but
I wouldn't describe it that way.
Well, in any case, Abe is somebody who is all up in his head and all about a man of no action, and Corey is all about action, and really desperate action, because she's trying to save her son and escape and get away from this the clutches of this kind of political and criminal conspiracy that's got her all ensnared. And these two very opposite people come together and create something quite amazing, much greater than the sum of their equal parts, I guess. They fulfill each other in a way that I think is quite unique in fiction. And I've never really read a love story like this that, sort of high and low, and also interior versus exterior, and a man of the intellect and a woman of passion and courage. So it really is I think for people who want to read not just a great thriller and a great and suspenseful plot with a terrific villain, we should maybe talk a little bit about that son of a bitch. But I think it's a great love story that I've never seen before.
Well, but it's the same issue as I was talking about with the screenwriters, which is these two people that, Abe really teaches Corey to be perceptive, to be insightful, to understand her emotional life and make decisions that she never could have even imagined. But Corey brings Abe back to life. I mean, Abe was a guy that was a great psychiatrist, but had no life whatsoever. And he falls madly in love with her. And it's the most, and this is what I love to write about, the most unexpected things that happen from, really wonderful, well-intentioned people who are just trying to do the right thing. And you can follow Corey and Abe over 3 books, and in every book they do something more unexpected than the last.
Yeah. Well, I mean, both books have these sort of wonderful male characters, but really, to me, the moral center of both of all of these novels are female, and I wonder what it is that draws you to drawing strong women and really taking them through their paces in this way. And there's a larger conversation that we've had off camera about the kind of cultural revolution taking place now in Hollywood, where people are all of a sudden waking up to realize that Hollywood doesn't tell women's stories. They have completely abandoned half the population with exception. I mean, there have been some wonderful movies, but by and large, the plight of actresses who hit 40 and can't find work, and female directors who can't get a job. All of a sudden, the dam broke, and people realized that this was insane, that instead of that we were shutting out, because it used to be the great movies of the 30s and 40s. You had Betty Davis and Katharine Hepburn and all this kind of stuff, and then that all just sort of vanished in exchange for comic books and adolescent, 40-year-old adolescent boys, jerking off and stuff. And so I wonder a bit about, you being ahead of the, well, not so much ahead of the curve, but just why strong women are at the kind of center of your imagination in these novels.
That's a hard question to answer because it certainly wasn't something that I set out to do. They really took on lives of their own, but I was always interested in women who are operating below their capacity, very capable women who are somehow not able to realize their potential. And I was also interested in what happens to these women as they become self-aware and as they start taking charge. And one of the things that happened, and it happened in both books, and I didn't necessarily plan on it, is that they choose partners that you don't expect them to choose. And they both end up with the men that are the least likely people they would be with at the beginning of the book. And that's just a lot of the fun of writing these strong women, because they do things that you don't expect.
Yeah. Well, another centerpiece of your stories is Seattle as a character. And, I don't know that there's any other writer who, is so closely identified with Seattle as you are. There are, Saul Bellow writes about Chicago and so forth, but you really make Seattle, both Seattle high and low, a central character in your writing. You've a wonderful novel called Minos that people who, if they haven't read it, should read. But it's all about the runaway kids and living in Seattle, and it's just a fantastic insight into this street life. But I wonder what Seattle means to you and why it's such a central part of your mythology.
Well, when we moved from LA to Bainbridge Island, and then later we moved from Bainbridge Island to Capitol Hill in Seattle, Seattle was still very much a place where people came to self-invent themselves. There was really the capacity to be who you wanted to be. And it was not like there are generations of traditions that restrained you. And at the same time, there was still a newness and a wildness to Seattle. That that is not just the physical beauty and the access to wild places very nearby, but there is a kind of energy that comes from both the technological newness and from the people who come there with their own agendas. And one of the things that, this is a strange connection, but one of the things I love about Seattle is the restaurants. And one of the things I love about the restaurants is that, certainly you have fancier and equally distinguished restaurants in New York and LA, both cities where I've lived. But in Seattle, you have these unusual, wonderful restaurants that are not pretentious at all, that are just, you know, what they are, and they have their, and that's a very Seattle phenomenon. And that's partly what interested me, because I felt like if I, you know, as I lived in Seattle, and I lived in Seattle for almost 20 years, um, there was a kind of variety to it and a kind of dynamic to it that I found fascinating.
Yeah. And of course, you got Microsoft and big money, and in your novels, you've got you know, a very complicated political world that you, I think, write about brilliantly, and sort of corruption at the sort of center of it. You know, you don't think of Washington State being you know, you like to think of it as a place of seagulls and fish markets and things like that. But you draw this whole portrait of the ruling class there, which I think is really quite eye-opening for those of you who don't know what Seattle is like. Just
Well,
how the politics is run.
I mean, I think it's, you know, it's obviously fiction what I write, but and I do think Seattle has some very wonderful politicians, and there's some very, you know, innovative things happening in Seattle. But it, you know, Seattle's changed usually with Amazon and, you know, the new, and I don't really know contemporary Seattle the way that I knew it when Inside Passage, the first book, came out in 2013. And I'm sure that it's changed a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's talk about Minos, which, you know, I referenced before, which, you know, as I said, you know, deals with the world of runaways, and Corey is, you know, involved in, you know, one of the most sort of fascinating underbellies of the city. But we should probably talk about how we wrote a TV pilot together, and we adapted from the novel. And so I just wondered, you know, now this is you've gone from screenwriting to fiction writing to television, and you're sort of turning your novel inside out to make it into a television project. And I wondered, as a writer, what that experience was like for you, and what you drew on, and whether it brought you back to your days on Gailey Avenue, working with Andy Lewis and all these characters. I mean, I'm no Andy Lewis, but I mean the you know, whether you found those old muscles and useful, and whether that was pleasure to get back into that form.
Well, we're going to get the chance to see a little bit of that pilot that we wrote together in a few minutes. And I think that we should also take questions both before and after. But to answer your specific question, and this is a long-winded way of saying that I think that part of what I discovered coming back to writing a television pilot was that, you know, the movie and the TV industry have changed hugely since I produced movies. And contemporary, particularly long-form television, is some of the most exciting thing happening in the entertainment business. I mean, and you know this much better than I do. And but there's just wonderful long series that gives you a lot of time to develop a lot of different kinds of characters and do it over many, many hours. And there's some wonderful work being done. And I've had a wonderful time working on it. And people are taking risks there. When I first came to Hollywood, you know, this was, you know, Taxi Driver. This was the end of and people were taking huge risks and doing movies that no one would do today. Well, that's happening in television. And I found that when we wrote our little pilot, we were able to do some things that I don't think we would have tried to do if it were a movie. So I would like to see a little of it and talk more about it. And I'd also like to open up for questions for anyone in the audience now about any of the stuff we've talked about. We've talked a long time.
Well, yeah, thank you. That was actually very fascinating. Excellent questions, Jacob. I can't help. I want to be the first audience member to ask a question. So there's a couple of things as you were talking, Bert. I really appreciated when you talked about your characters. What really came through was your love for these individuals that you have created on the page. And you were talking a little bit about your process, how it evolved and what you learned from screenwriting and how you took it to being a novelist. Do you really start writing these characters and not really know the destination? I mean, is it constantly evolving? And in what point of that evolution do you really fall in love with your characters? Is it from the beginning, or do you discover your love for them?
Well, I think it's the hardest thing for me to start a book is to choose the characters, because I don't even begin starting the book until I'm in love with the characters. I mean, that's the first thing, to find people that you know you want to live with for a long time, and that you know are complicated and able to change, and you don't necessarily know what's going to happen when they do, but that's the whole job when you begin a story. Now, a thing like the Corey Logan trilogy, there's 3 books with the same central character, so each one gets better than the one before in terms of that process. Am I answering your question?
Yeah, no, there's a great quote in there. I can't wait to replay it and strip that quote out. That you don't start until you've been in love with these characters, because you're going to live with them. I love that. We got a question from Jade in the chat, and she asks, what are the biggest differences you found between the screenwriting and novel writing process?
Novel writing is much more, well, everybody's writing process is different, but my novel writing is much more you're on your own. All right, you're really thinking about the things you want to think about, and you can go in all sorts of directions. It's very internal. Whereas screenwriting, particularly if you're working for a studio, or there's a director involved, or if there's an actor or an actress involved, has lots of chefs, a lot of people who are giving you advice and giving you input. And that can be very fun. I mean, it's very much of a collaboration, and I'm not running it down. It's just not private in quite the same way that writing a novel is, for me.
So we have a question from Jennifer, and her question's pretty simple. And I think we have a lot of screenwriters in the audience. What is your advice, your suggestion for getting started as a writer, whether it be a novelist or a screenwriter?
I think you got to write. You got to just keep writing. Some of the first things that I wrote, in fact, the first book I ever wrote, I'm working on right now. I'm hoping to be the next book that I publish, because it didn't quite come together at the beginning, and you just keep after it. And I just came back to it, and I was thrilled with some of the things I found, and I thought some of the things that I found were not so good. But that, and I'd like to give Jake a chance to answer at that too, because he knows a lot more about screenwriting than I do.
Well, my advice is, it's tricky right now. The business is having a. I compare it to Mao's Cultural Revolution right now. The chance right now to tell original stories has never been. In some ways, it's it's a very wide open time, and it's a chance now to tell stories that are not formulaic, not generic, It's not cops, lawyers, doctors, families with 17 children. It's there's now a kind of a rush to try to tell stories that are original to the people who are writing them, and not an authenticity. And it's very exciting. It's difficult if you're an old veteran hack, because you can't quite remember what your authentic story would even begin to look like. But watching writers come forward and be telling stories like the Parasite movie just blew everybody's mind, because here is this unlikely talented, brilliant director who writes this, who's writing about South Korea, and it's completely relatable and timeless to everybody. And if I could have thought of that, I mean, you could have set that same story in a way in Los Angeles. It's the best of times and it's the worst of times. And obviously the answer is just to keep writing and don't give up. But it is mercilessly cynical. It is a very, very difficult climb. There's an entire army of executives who are there to stop you. And you just simply have to find something in yourself that is so original and so authentic to what you most want to say that it transcends that and leaps up. And if you've got one of those things, there are just as many people who are there to sort of tell you no. There are a lesser army of people who are desperate to find something to say yes to. They are hungering for, some magic. Shonda Rhimes, who comes, I don't think Shonda Rhimes ever did a minute of staffing. I think she just came fully formed and created Grey's Anatomy. And, there are, my advice to a young writer is don't in a million years go anywhere near show business. But if you're going to, it's because you can't stop. You have to do it, and it's a crusade, and you're determined to tell a story that nobody else can tell. And you also have to sort of know the craft and the form to put it in. And but that part can be learned. But it really is. It is having something to say, as what's his name says in A Star Is Born. He says, if you don't have something to say, you're gonna end up drinking too much. So it's just I think the advice is to find a story so important to you that you have to tell it, and tell it in your own way.
Excellent. Well, once again, I want to apologize to the audience and to our guests. We had some technical difficulties, so I think we started this episode off about 10 minutes late. But now we're going to transition. Very excited to read Teleplay. We're going to read the first 16 pages that you two have co-written, correct?
Correct.
And so I'm going to bring in the actors right now. When we agreed to read the Teleplay, I'm like, yeah, I'll cast it for you. And then I realized we had like 18 characters in the first 16 pages. So we're going to have, I believe, 4 or 5 actors, and we're going to double up on a lot of the roles, and we're just going to have some fun with it. So I'm going to bring them in right now. And then if Todd can hear me, 5 actors, and we're going to double up on remind the actors to please mute your YouTube. So I'm going to bring them in right now. See if I got everybody in here. So, and Todd, if you can hear me, can you let me know if you're going to be reading with us? Todd is our producer, but he was having some technical difficulties. And let's just go around the room. And what I'll do is I'll introduce you, and then just say hi, and then let us know what roles you'll be reading think you got all that in email. And we'll start with Christina Williams. How are you doing tonight? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks. Doing well. I'm reading Peanut and Sarah.
Very cool. Jasmine Lomax, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Thank you for joining us. What characters are you reading tonight?
Corey and Lily.
All right. Aaron Washington, my friend, how are you?
I'm good. How about yourself? Thank you for having me. I'm going to be reading Rocket, Abe Stein, and Buzz.
Nice. And Christopher Morrison, how are you?
I'm doing great. How about you? How about yourself?
Good. What role we got you for?
Got me for Snapper, Lou, and Johnny Boy.
And I think I'm going to do some backfilling here and read a couple rules, which I already forgot. I'm going to read The Strange Man and Owen Thomas, I think. And Todd, are you hearing me? Well, he was going to be the narrator, but if he cannot narrate, I shall narrate, unless Aaron, you want to narrate.
I cannot narrate.
Oh, you're muted, Aaron.
No, I think I might do best just reading the character. My voice is actually kind of having its way with me a little bit too. So, you know.
Okay, so before we dive into this, Jacob, Bert, do you want to give us any intro or any opening context?
Well, this is in this world that I found fascinating, in this world of runaways and street kids in scuffling in Seattle, and Corey is all involved in it, and there's a serial killer loose, and he's unlike any serial killer I've ever read about, and I think that sets the table. So let's. I'd love to hear what it sounds like.
Excellent. And one last question for Bert. This is Corey is a lead character in a trilogy of your novels, correct?
Correct.
And is this a one-off, or is it taken from some point in that trilogy?
This is the third book in the trilogy, Mino. But I would like to add one other thing, because this is not only street kids, there are also kids in private schools. And one of the central characters is Sarah, who is in treatment with Abe, who is Corey's husband. So that will be part of this first act as well.
Okay, we've got our other producer, Hannah. If Hannah, do you want to narrate, Hannah? Do you have that script handy? And then at your convenience, Hannah, whenever you're ready.
How you doing, Peanut? You okay?
It comes and goes.
Everything's gonna be all right. I'm tracking 8-Ball. Got your back, sweet baby girl.
I believe you.
Oh, snap. Where you been?
Here, there, everywhere.
What's up? What you got in the bag? Cut me in. You know I'm good.
Count on it. Catch you later, all right? Gotta split.
That's him, Lou.
Fucking bonehead. Always making me run.
Yo, Miss Logan, how you doing? Doing fine. Thank you, Lily. Looking for 8-Ball? Still looking. What's with Rocket? He's been freaky since 8-Ball went missing. You're looking more beautiful every day. How's the baby?
Baby's good.
They're ready for you at the clinic whenever you're ready.
I don't need a doctor, Miss Logan.
It's not for you. It's for the baby. I've been telling her that.
Hey, I have to pause us all. I apologize. Hey, Hannah, the audience is not hearing you because I think your mic might be muted to them. So I can either take over or you can, if it's an easy fix. It's all good. Is it an easy fix for you? This is our universal love episode. The universe.
Everyone's talking.
Oh no.
Oh no. Well, hopefully the audience can hear me now.
Let's see if we test them.
I'm sorry, audience. You're my favorite people in the whole world, and I let you down.
All right. Okay, well, let's just continue. Move forward.
Can they hear me?
Yes.
Hello, audience. Okay. All right.
Yep, they're hearing the new voice. All right.
Okay. Well, I will start from the strange man. The strange man follows at a discreet distance, and now we see his face. Revealed to us for the first time, a scarlet birthmark stains his cheek from lip to brow, covering a grotesque scar. His brows are also scarred. It's a face that is at once grotesque and indelible. The Olympic Academy bathroom, an abstract Picasso-like drawing of a death mask. The Cretan bull death mask is taped to the bathroom mirror. It eerily matches the face of the strange man we've just seen.
I am the priestess, the Vestal Virgin. I pray to the oracle of Apollo, the serpent slayer. I must find Theseus.
Widened to reveal Sarah, almost 16, willowy with traces of acne. Though she's growing into beauty, she has black hair with shiny red streaks and wears a spiked leather collar. With her double-edged dagger, and how do you pronounce this?
Athame.
An athame. She has ritualistically carved a circle in the hardwood floor. Then in the circle, a 5-pointed star. At each of the points of the star, she is lighting candles. 3 other candles blaze on the windowsill.
I call on the oracle to help me find him. I need him now.
From her bag, she takes a vial of wine, honey, chopped cheese, a meal, her homemade ambrosia, the divine nectar of the gods.
Blue-haired Poseidon, master of ships and stallions, you who sired him, lead me to Theseus. The beast is rising. I need him now.
She drinks down the strange potion, letting it run down her chin, her neck. And we. Dead End Alley. Snapper enters, heading toward an abandoned building. The strange man follows, just as far behind so that Snapper does not sense him. The Olympic Academy bathroom. Sarah is twirling now, waving the athame above her head, chanting for Theseus.
I call on Theseus. The beast is rising.
In her frenzy, she knocks over a candle on the windowsill. The candle falls against the green and red paisley curtain. The fire is instantaneous. As Sarah chants and twirls, the curtain ignites from sill to ceiling. The abandoned building. Snapper is prying open a boarded window on the abandoned building. It's a doorway to his squat, a basement room where he's been living. The strange man watches from the entrance to the alley. The Olympic Academy bathroom. Sarah is in her circle, still chanting. The wall has caught fire and smoke covers the ceiling. The smoke alarm on the ceiling goes off.
The beast is rising. I call on Theseus. I need him now.
Owen Thomas, 40s, the dean at the Olympic, breaks through the barricaded door. The room is thick with flames and smoke.
Sarah, what the hell are you doing?
I can't reach Theseus.
He grabs the girl, who screams, tries to fend him off. The school custodian and others enter. Chaos everywhere.
Call the fire department.
The abandoned building. Snapper is prying open the door to his squat.
Hello, Snapper.
Snapper turns, reacts with terror and recognition.
Minos?
Minos roughly puts his left arm around Snapper's neck from behind. With his right hand, he covers Snapper's nose and mouth with a chloroform-drenched cloth. Relax, Snapper baby, pretty Snapper baby. Off Snapper's terror. Fade out. Ben, I apologize if that was your line. It was within.
Oh, I didn't.
It was within the text.
Yeah,
We're moving on to Act 1.
yes,
Great.
thank you.
Act 1, fade in. Abby Stein's office, next day. Sarah sits in a chair from Dr. Abby Stein, 40s.
Abe Stein.
Abe Stein. I'm so sorry. I know an Abby, and my brain filled it in. Abe Stein, 40s. Big like a bear with a beard. A wise old bear that doesn't care what he looks like. He's lighting his pipe.
Isn't there some kind of no smoking deal?
My landlord lives in Hong Kong.
He draws on the pipe, a long beat. Then,
What happened at school?
I called on the oracle of Apollo, the keeper of truth. I have to reach Theseus. I need his help.
Help for what?
The beast is rising. Only Theseus can stop him.
And the fire?
I had to make a magic circle, cast a protective spell. I accidentally knocked over a candle with my athame.
she reaches into her bag and shows him her dagger.
2 times I've set fires in this office without meaning to.
No kidding? If you lie, I'm out of here.
I think the match is out and Next, I know my desk is on fire or smoke is pluming out of the wastebasket.
That's why you have that big old bowl of an ashtray?
Yes, exactly. So, how can I help you?
Obviously, you can't.
Look, I know you're here because the school sent you before you can be readmitted. But consider the possibility I may be able to help you.
No fucking way.
Try me.
Sarah takes a drawing out of her shoulder bag. It's the same Cretan bull death mask that she taped to the bathroom mirror.
Now, mister, how are you going to help me fight the beast? He's rising, and he'll kill again.
Abe studies the drawing.
Is this the beast?
She puts the drawing back in her bag, closes her eyes, quietly muttering to herself. A strange chant or incantation about shaggy centaurs and ravaged women and sacrifices to the Minotaur.
I was a classics major. I know something about this stuff.
Which brings her out of her trance.
O great and patient oracle, let me kneel and pray upon Apollo's altar. There is no time.
She still holds the athame and stands up now, waving it above her head. Abe moves to her and tries to take it from her. She's on her feet now, resists, but Abe is stronger. He takes the weapon, and she slugs him hard in the stomach.
Okay.
He gently tries to restrain her, but she shakes him off.
You can't help me, and you don't know who can.
Off, Abe. Pike Place Market. We are in front of the original Starbucks, tourists and locals everywhere. Abe talks with Owen.
Look, I'm sympathetic. I like Sarah. We have a responsibility to the larger community, though, the students and faculty.
She needs the structure. I'll be working with her 3 times a week.
It's going to be a tough sell.
And what is she talking about with this beast? Where is all this coming from?
She's had her share of trouble.
Such as?
Well, her mother was diagnosed with cancer when they were on sabbatical in Greece. She died days later. Sarah was 6. She and her brother became inseparable. Greek mythology became their own private language.
She needs to be back in school, even if it's only part-time. She needs to stay connected to what she knows.
She's too disruptive.
Oh, and what if she's right? What if she and her friends are in danger?
You're actually buying into this nonsense?
I'm just saying, I'm just trying to find out what it means. You said yourself Sarah was an excellent student, and this came on all of a sudden.
Don't overreact. Teenagers are always imagining things.
I don't think I'm overreacting. You said it yourself. Sarah is very smart. Somebody needs to listen to her.
Greek restaurant. A hole-in-the-wall deli off Broadway. Corey sits opposite. Johnny Boy, 20, a street kid, good-looking. One of her success stories. He works here and looks like he's thriving. Buzz, African-American, sits with them in a booth.
Rocket crashed at my squad last night.
Doing with him? He took off running from my friend, Lou Ballard.
The cop?
Man, he's okay. Just wanted to ask him about 8-Ball.
That Rocket's scared to death. He thinks 8-Ball's dead. No way he's talking to some badge.
I get that. 8-Ball's the father of Peanut's baby. Something bad had to happen to him. No way he's taking off on her.
I gotta talk with Rocket.
Gotta find him first.
A beat. Buzz is working up to something.
A favor, Miss Logan? A big favor?
If I can.
You've been inside, right?
Geiger, 22 months.
My one-time gal, Slim, she's going down. Busted for meth. Geiger, same as you. She's freaking out. Slim's sure she's going to take a shank in the neck inside. Will you talk with her? You know, help her chill?
I'll do what I can. I'll tell her what I learned about doing time, and I can set her up with someone inside. Yeah, I have a friend at Geiger who's connected. She'll look out for her.
You're the best, Miss Logan. The best.
If you want, we can visit her together. Tell her we'll check in on her first visiting day. That's a thing to look forward to.
Perfect. I owe you. And Buzz pays his debts.
Buzz nods, done with this.
So what's cooking?
Snapper's back.
I don't think so. That boy's long gone.
He called. He wants my help.
Must be in danger. He asking you to help with it? I mean, we all know you're a badass, but the snapper can dodge a bullet. He must be run there.
He's late. I was supposed to meet him here a half hour ago.
Rocket on the run, 8-Ball dead, Snapper, a no-show. I'm spooked. Something's going down.
Minos' lair, a guest house overlooking a steep ravine. Minos is at his work table covered with makeup supplies, paints and rogues, FX and bruised color wheels, liquid latex, spirit gum, and anything else that a makeup artist might need. Snapper is strapped on his back, tied to a stretcher. He's alive but anesthetized. Carefully, Minos applies a foam latex prosthetics appliance. A mask made from that has been injected into a mold. The mask is familiar, reminiscent of Sarah's drawing on the bathroom mirror. He affixes it to the victim's face with spirit gum. Angle, mirror. Attached to it, a photograph of a man, 30s, his face battered and scarred from years of boxing. He's lying on his back in the ring. His scarred, battered face is bloody. We don't exactly know the significance of this photo, but as Minos continues his work, we realize he's using the photograph as inspiration. He's making up Snapper to look just like the bloody, scarred boxer in the photo. Abe and Corey's house, dining room, evening. Family assembled. Abe and Corey, we now realize, are married. Corey's 17-year-old son, Billy, is scarfing pasta. He's got soccer practice.
It's bad enough 8-Ball goes missing. His girlfriend's going to have his baby any minute. It's not like him.
What does Lou think?
You know Lou. He says that's why they're called runaways. On top of everything else, Snapper blew me off today.
Oh, what's up with it? Oh, excuse me.
That was my bad. Go for it, Aaron.
No, that's yours. It's Billy.
What's up with Snapper?
He wanted to see me. We arranged to sit down with Johnny Boy, and he didn't show.
Are you worried?
Something's going on out there, Abe. It's a bad vibe. It's scaring me.
Cell phone ringing.
Who's that?
Corey picks up her phone, checks the number.
It's Lou.
It's dinner time. Call him back.
But Lou's call is a priority.
Yeah, Lou. What's up? On my way.
Volunteer park, night, crime scene. As Corey and Abe pull up in front of the Seattle Asian Art Museum, the area is cordoned with police tape. Cop cars everywhere. As they exit, they move down the hill. Lou is there.
Why am I here, Lou? Topic sentence, please.
He had your phone number in his wallet.
Show me.
Lou leads, she follows. Angle, murder scene. A man lying on his back on the grass. His hands are beside his head, fingers spread, as if posing for a picture. He has a battered face which resembles a familiar boxer. His nose broken, his eyelids and brows layered with scar tissue. A prominent scar that extends from his partially closed eye over his brow and forehead. Corey leans in closer and realizes that this face has been professionally made up. It's a boy's face, artfully made up to look like an old man. But why?
Another weird thing.
Lou wore latex gloves. He gently opened the man's mouth, lifted his tongue. There was an old silver coin under the dead man's tongue.
Jesus, what's that about?
No idea. Maybe some ritual? Embedding he OD'd. The coin. The makeup. Part of some screwy ceremony gone bad.
Corey looks closer. She lifts a metal chain hanging from the boy's neck. It carries a small silver stallion.
Oh no. Oh God.
Abe's arm is around her, keeping her up.
What is it?
One of yours?
Uh-huh. Snapper.
She begins to cry. Off Corey's horror. Fade out. End Act 1.
Dun, dun, dun. Well, thank you, everybody. Well done, actors. Appreciate your patience.
Yeah, that was great.
Any questions from the actors before I let you guys go? Any thoughts on the script?
Excited to read the rest of it.
Yeah, I was curious about what was going to happen, and then two, I don't know if I missed it, but what's kind of the time frame here? Is just kind of any kind of time, any kind of era, any decade? What
It's now.
now? Okay, okay.
It's, you know, you can get the whole thing in Bert's novel Minos, or I'm sure we can get you the whole script, but it's pretty weird. It's you know, talk to him. It's pretty twisted, and he's got this you know, who this guy is and who Sarah is. It's all very it's just a wonderful, creepy story. So from the if you like creepy stories, you should buy his book.
Thank you.
Which you can find where to buy his books in the chat, just so you know. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? Questions? All right. Well, I'm going to release you guys then. Thank you. Fantastic job. Thank you for rolling with the punches.
Yeah,
Thank
for
you
having
all
me.
very much.
Thank you very much.
Oh, actually, hold on. Don't leave. Silly me.
Oh.
Bert and Jacob, do you have any questions of the actors before I let him go?
I just thought it was a lot of fun to hear it. You guys are great.
Is
I
this
agree.
is this the first time you guys have table read it?
I think
Yeah.
so. I think
Oh,
so.
sorry. I thought you were asking
Or it's been a
me.
while. You know, we wrote this a couple of years ago, so it you know, it just it was just a lot of fun for me to hear it.
Cool. Well, thank you again. Nice work, everyone. Hannah, thank you for rolling with the punches, Hannah. I know you.
Good job, Hannah.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you, everybody.
All right. So let me check out the chat and see if the audience has any questions. There's just a lot of compliments in here about the script. Before we started reading, I did have a question I wanted. Now it's all lost in the. I'm going to ask a question while I'm figuring this out. So the book was already written, so this is just an adaptation. And Jacob, you weren't part of the novel writing, right?
No.
So can you guys speak a little bit to your adaptation collaboration? What was that like, or any insight that you could give the audience about adaptation from novels to screenplays?
Well, I'll tell you this, that one of the ways to break in, if you're on the outside, is to get the rights to a piece of to a book or to an, you know, they call it IP. And these guys are so cowardly that unless there's something, the executives are so cowardly that if you come in with a, you know, something between hard or soft cover, that gives them, they relax a lot. So if you can find a wonderful book that, you know, you remember reading as a child, or you just, you think you have a particular take on, that is a good way to do it. And authors will often let you run with their, you know, you call their agent, you say, I just like a chance to set this up. And they will, you know, I mean, it's usually very little money, if any. And that is another way to break in. But that aside, I've been reading Bert's books as they were published, and we had been in touch. And he was, you know, he just asked me what I thought about the TV marketplace. And I said, I think we would be best served if we'd control it if we just went to work. And and if you're open to sitting down and trying to break story, let's see what we can do in terms of, it's a distilling process. I mean, the novel is much fuller and richer and more complicated, and the characters are much more vividly drawn. But you take a 4-act structure, a 4-act formula, with a teaser that is there to hook the viewer. So there we have this creepy looking guy spying on some street kids, and it gives you just a sense of an ominous sense of something's off here, because that guy sure is a freak. And then once you have them hooked in that, you take them, you bring in your 2 main characters and you put them in a position where they're in crisis. They've got to find out what's going on. And of course, in a first act, they're too late, and they're behind the villain. So you set up your situation, you set up your villain, and you set up your rootable protagonists, and you try to make them as interesting as you can in it. So that's how that all formed. That's how that all came about.
How about you, Bert?
Well, it was actually a pleasure to have Jake helping me with writing, helping me, showing me how to do a pilot. And it was a lot of fun because, there's a different language for television, certainly than for screenplay, but even more different than a novel. And so I learned a lot just on what we could and couldn't do. And, I was very interested to hear this being read, because I realized there's a lot going on in this little pilot in the first 16 pages. That's all we read.
So I have let's see here. I have a question from Naomi Davis, and she's asking, Bert, did your move to fiction writing from screenwriting has to do with an interest in characters' interior lives? Has the long form TV writing found a way to convey our interior lives? I think she's talking about a lot of that interior thought process that goes on that we don't get to see in television.
There's a couple of questions here. The first one is, sort of coming from screenwriting. Could you read the first part of the question again? I want to make sure I've got it right.
Yeah. Did your move to fiction writing from screenwriting have to do with an interest in characters' interior lives?
Truthfully, it really had more to do with being able to have the last say on what would happen. I mean, I worked a long time on movies and then with screenplays, and you ever really are the final decider on what you're doing. And my real decision to write novels was, I was very interested in characters, of course, but you can do that in screenplays too. But you don't have the final say in what you're going to make. Whereas with a novel, you're done with the novel, it's your novel. And then there was a second part to the question.
I think it was going back out to TV. And do you think that TV is a better medium for getting inside people's inside character than you found in the movie business? And I think if I could answer, not having had your experience in the movies, I think it's the same. It's the same dilemma. that, you know, a character comes through action, and you know, with TV, if you're lucky enough to have a long running series, you have more time and you can slow things down. But that would be what I would add.
Well, Bert, I know that we have put technical difficulties on you, and we know that it is late over there on the East Coast. So I think what I want to do is close this episode out, but any last thoughts that you may have to your audience for both of you, this applies to both of you, that you may want to share just in general, basically about, how about this? I'll make it more specific. You guys have been in the creative economy, in creative industry for decades. And I would that is a road less traveled. And a lot of our audience is attempting or has been traveling that road. And I'd just love a little piece of insight, and it can be as general as you want.
It's corporate, and you are, and as a writer, you are, you are a bit of an alien to the corporate structure. They want to make money, and they don't care about much more than that. Somebody was explaining to me that really part of what happened in the movie business was that, and it also, I think, this is about 10 years ago, was that they were saying they don't care about a movie that makes 30 million or 25 million. They want a tent pole. They want Star Wars. They want Batman. That's all they're looking for, and they'll indulge you, but you're completely expendable unless you can make them $1 billion. If you're gonna make them $1 billion, you can do anything you want. TV is a little bit less. I mean, that's changing now, and it's exciting. Netflix. It's interesting how, a change in the means of production results in a change of consciousness. Netflix and Hulu and all these other outlets have, I think, blown up that big money, big capital. They've blown up capitalism. Put it that way. And there's a kind of a scramble now for what would have been considered niche programming. It can be, you can do a show set in Berlin, and you'll get a smaller audience, but people will back it. And so it's a very kind of gold rushy time, but at the same time, it's the whole industry is having kind of a nervous breakdown because, this is inside baseball a little bit, but there's been a huge lawsuit between the Writers Guild and the talent agencies, where the talent agencies had gone to Wall Street and to the hedge funders and said, the studio system is over. The big networks have no control anymore. We own the talent. We are going to be the one big profit center that's going to take over everything. We will then become production entities, and all our big agencies will have production companies. So the Writers Guild very bravely, and some friends of mine were in this charge, just defied it and said, we will not go to work for the talent agencies. That's backwards. The agents represent us. We're no longer going to be, we're not working for producers who call themselves our 10 percenters, because we're negotiating against ourselves every time we come up for it. And this battle, they really went to war. Everybody was upset. Everybody had to fire his agent or her agent. And for those of us who really relied on our agents, that was a tough one, because I was with my agent. It was over a year that we sat this out. But one by one by one by one, the agencies have all come back crippled and humbled, and they have surrendered on packaging. They've surrendered on the idea of producing their own product. The only outliers are William Morris and CAA. William Morris has gone to, has leveraged itself out to hundreds of millions of dollars because they told their backers that this is where you make your big money. This is where you make the killing and the big profits in Hollywood. And they now can't because they don't have the writers anymore. So everything is in flux. Everything is kind of wide open. I think things will consolidate a bit, with all the streamers. I think Apple and Hulu and Netflix will survive. HBO Max maybe. But network television is in terrible shape because the advertising model doesn't work. And the advertisers are saying, we're not going to advertise for Mercedes-Benz and pay millions of dollars to have it air on when there's no programming, there's no Law and Order, there's no NCIS. So it really is, the world everywhere is on fire and cracking up. But the industry here is in a very volatile state, and nobody knows how it will end up. But the one thing that you can count on, or you can hope to count on, is the power of your own voice and the value of your own voice to create something. And I remember during the 2008 crash, I knew a guy who was a director, and came from a very distinguished family. All his brothers were Wall Streeters and doctors and lawyers and so on, and they were all wiped out in the stock market crash. And so he was the black sheep of the family. And he called his dad and he said, "Hey, Dad, guess what? I'm in the most stable profession in the world. I'm an artist." And there's an element where being an artist at this particular time is very, very risky. But I can't think of a better, it's the one, if you can bring something beautiful to the world, this is a great time for it.
Bert.
I'm really not in Hollywood world anymore. I can talk about lots of things that's happening in publishing and about novels. And I think Jake is far more in touch with TV and what's being done in that world now than I am. But I mean, I guess what I mostly would like to do is I want to thank you and say that this has been, this is an example. I think everything is changing. That there are stuff like, this kind of Zoom show where, we can get some actors on and do a little thing and sort of improvise. And I admire the way you guys have done that. And I think, just my makeup is probably a little more optimistic than Jake's, but I'm not as close to it, and I'm not questioning what he's saying. But I always feel like there's another act, and certainly in movies and TV. There's going to be changes. There's going to be all kinds of new places where they are being produced. And, second what Jake said, that, if you don't have to do it, you really shouldn't do it. It's a terrible business. And it's really a rough place, but it also can be very satisfying. And if you really love it, you can find your way, and there will be new. I remember when I first started, I had no idea, and I found a way. And there are other ways that new people will find that are, as yet to be discovered. So I'm optimistic.
Well, thank you for joining us, gentlemen. despite the difficulties, I had a great time. I
Yeah,
learned
this
a
was
lot.
really fun.
And I'm looking through the comments in YouTube, and the audience was really appreciative of what you've shared. They already want to know